Hi, I'm Kevin, and this is my renovation story. I grew up in Portsmouth, Virginia. It was a regular childhood, to be honest with you. Outside all day, come in when the street lights come on. I had a great upbringing, a very supportive family. It wasn't the easiest, but hindsight made me understand that it actually made me tougher and pretty much built me for what I'm doing right now. Growing up in Portsmouth, Virginia, as far as after you left high school, the options were limited. It was limited to working at the Ford plant, going into the military, or if your family could afford it, going to college. The only opportunity I saw for myself is get a good job, go to work, save your money, buy a house. So when I was 22, I joined the Merchant Marines. I saw it as the most viable option in order to get paid a lot of money just for simply doing hard work. The Merchant Marine is so far from the military. It's a civilian mariner. Me personally, I worked on container ships for the most part, transferring goods from Belgium, Germany, the Middle East, China, everywhere, and bringing those back to the United States. The first time I came off the ship, I decided to teach myself how to build houses. So my first house took me about 2 years to complete. In the process of me building the house, I would actually come off the ship and sleep in my car. I would spend 4 to 6 months on the ship, and I would come home and I would work on the house until I actually started to go broke, pretty much. So every time my funds got down to about $5,000, I would head back on another ship for 4 to 6 months. I started to pay more attention to the items that we were shipping, which just happened to be shipping containers. And I just, after teaching myself how to build that first house, I started to look at containers differently as a simple box or a simple aesthetic. After you cut the windows and doors, it's pretty much a house at that point. I thought this house would take 6 containers. The city actually only allowed me to use 2 on the first floor, which is why this house is a hybrid container house. So this house is 2 containers on the first floor. The second and third story are stick built. So to start off building a container home, you need a solid foundation. So we poured an 8-inch monolithic slab. We also use rebar and fiber to give it the strength to hold a structure of this size. The build was very difficult because everybody was new to it. It was my first container home, my framers, it was their first time working with metal, my welders, so we had to get a feel for each other. So it was a learning process with this first house. So once the foundation is poured, I call my hotshot drivers and get them online to deliver the containers. This is where it got tricky because they had to drive in reverse all the way up this street, probably about a half a mile, just to get to this job site because this neighborhood is so tight-knit. So we had to have all the roads closed and we had to have enough space for the 100-ton crane to be able to lift the shipping containers and put them in place on this foundation. That day was very terrifying. I was actually scared. Hopefully everything would work out, and it actually did. This is 2 containers. The first container starts at the far end and comes about to this point. This is a 4-foot gap, which we bridge together using stick frame and traditional welding. And the last container is from this far end to that side of this window flare. I decided to cover most of the container. I actually wanted to add a lot of detail because the front elevation of the house is so flat, which is why I added window flares to give it another texture, and also why I used 1x4 hardy trim to give it just some notes of some different, just to add a little texture to the house. People who didn't see the early process still to this day wouldn't believe that it was actually a container house. So come take a look at the house. This is the first floor of the house. This is the actual container portion. It's 8 feet wide, 40 feet up and down. So this is the actual size of a one bedroom container essentially. So this is the first guest bedroom. I just wanted to maximize the bedroom space to make sure you didn't feel closed in, because containers already naturally have a somewhat of a lower ceiling. Large windows and white walls make the space feel enormous in comparison to how big it actually is. You have to do a few different architectural tricks to make it feel different or feel bigger. You want to use 8-foot doors instead of the standard 6+ feet. You want to do very large windows to bring in a lot of natural light. So this right here is the Jack and Jill bathroom. I kept the colors pretty much the same. I still wanted it to feel bright. This is actually an entire container right here. So when dealing with such a small space, you want to maximize it. So I went with white walls, white ceilings, light floors. These cabinets are actually upper kitchen cabinets. So it gave me a depth of 12 inches so I can maximize this walkway. These are floating vanities, which gives me a feel of more space. It's a little bit of trickery when you're dealing with container homes. So the next space is the second guest room, which is same color scheme, white ceilings, white walls, light floors, and this looks out into the front yard through these large windows. So right now we're headed actually upstairs to the stick frame portion of the house. This is the living area on the second floor because I wanted to capture all the views of downtown. So your living, kitchen, and dining, all open concept with 2 decks, actually gives you multiple views of downtown. This area is the living room. You have your TV right here with your fireplace and everything. This space has its own private entrance and its private deck. So this kitchen is actually a labor of love. This is my first time building a chef kitchen, which is why I did a 36-inch dual fuel stove, gas on top, electrical on the bottom. And this backsplash, actually, it was a design idea that a lot of people fought me on, but I did it because I actually wanted the space, once again, to feel bigger. And I know with reflection, it'll make any space feel like it's 2 times the size. I did the floating hood because I wanted to add texture to every part of the home. This is something that's not often done. Usually the range is on the wall, but I like to go against the grain. Behind the kitchen, we actually have the dining room area, and this actually leads you to the second deck. This is my favorite part of the house. This is the longest deck. It's 40 feet by 7 feet deep. This is where I come out like on a nice Friday night, have a glass of wine, and just pretty much chill out, relax. You still got the views of downtown. Not too many houses have 3 decks and city views of downtown. So another fun feature of this house is actually this accent wall. The accent wall for the stairwell is actually 1x1 pieces of lumber that they deliver when they deliver bulk objects to your job sites. This is actually trash. And we took it and repurposed it and made it something beautiful, I think. It's actually the most popular feature of the house, and it has this little peekaboo so you can see who's coming up the first floor. This cost $100 and it was worth every penny. Upstairs is the primary and the flex room. So let's take a look. So right now, this is the 3rd level, and this is your primary room. It's quiet because we actually use spray foam insulation, which helps insulate all of the noise that you would hear from this city and all the outside elements. Behind this door is your primary bathroom. Let's take a look. I just wanted to match what we already had built on the first level, but we went with the ultra modern fixtures, vanity bowls, backlit mirrors. Down this hall, you have your flex room, which is set up as a nursery right now, but it can be used for multiple purposes, such as an office. This house is actually for sale, and once we sell it, I'm looking to keep the ball rolling and do more affordable living spaces using repurposed shipping containers. My vision for what to do next, honestly, is to build a commercial structure, a multi-family type structure using shipping containers, and actually start the affordable housing movement. That's important to me because everybody deserves a home, I feel like. There shouldn't be anybody living under a bridge when I can make them a container home. It just doesn't make sense to me. Everything I went through to get to this point and to get to where I'm at right now, it was worth it. I wouldn't change anything because it made me who I am. It gave me the work ethic that I currently have. And it gave me the mindset that I can do anything. With this project, the thing I'm most happy about is the fact that it's done. It took a lot to get to this point, but after it was completed, I stepped back and looked, and I was in disbelief, to be honest with you, because it just started with a simple idea, and for it to actually come to fruition through hard work, like, I wouldn't change anything.
When we first were naming our bus, we kind of went back and forth for a while, weren't really sure what to name it. I think the story behind it, the girl said like she had a chicken named Bessie and it just died or something. So I was like, oh, that's so sad, like the name can live on. And so yeah, we just decided to go with Bessie. Hi, I'm Kels.
And I'm Jay, and this is our handmade home, Bessie the bus.
As soon as we got the bus, one of the first things we did was got proper dirty and just ripped the whole thing apart. We took out the seats, took out the ceiling, all the sheet metal inside the bus, ripped up the floors, basically just took it down to the bare bones so then we could start afresh. We had a blank canvas to work off of.
When you get in here, you'll notice right away there's a lot of space, and that was kind of our goal in creating this space. Although it's a tiny space, we didn't want it to feel like it was compact and that there wasn't a lot of room. So the first thing we did to kind of help that was raise the roof 20 inches. We're both really tall, so having that extra space is definitely needed. It was difficult, but definitely worth it.
One of the things I'm most proud of in this bus is like probably one of the simplest things in the bus. It's this table right next to me. So it actually folds out to be like this long. And then you can hide things in it when it's folded up.
We definitely made the work area like a focal point in our bus, because we obviously have to work while we're on the road. It's not just all fun and games. So this whole area folds out, and we both can have a workspace, our own area right by the window, and it's really nice. And then when we're ready to like work out in here or do other things or have people over, we just fold it right back up. So I think that's like a unique feature in our bus, which is really nice. We definitely have like a lot more open space than most buses that I've seen. Something that was really important to me as someone who loves to cook is having a full kitchen. Here we have a full kitchen. We have tons of storage space again, cabinets with food. Jay and I are huge foodies, so it was really important for me to have a full kitchen, be able to have a stove, an oven, just everything that you need to cook. We have a huge sink here as well, so we can just throw our dirty dishes in here and not really have to worry about them, especially for traveling or moving. This sink has come in clutch for things like that. One thing I did not want to compromise on was the shower. So we kind of went back and forth on this, but I just wanted to have a full-size shower, not have to worry about having to go to gyms or not shower for a few weeks. Having the shower and 100 gallons of water has really made it so that we live pretty much the same way that we were living before. Over here is our bed. It's a queen-size bed. It's a little bit tall. I'm about 5'11", so put that into perspective how tall this thing is. But it's nice because on the other side, which Jay will show you, we do have a lot of storage underneath our bed, which is the whole reason and purpose for making it so tall. This whole design back here, kind of feature headboard wall Jay and I made. We just started putting 2x1s together, mixed and matched them, and just created a headboard, which I think it turned out pretty nice. All right, guys, so that's pretty much it for the inside of the bus. Jay's outside, so let's go meet him out there and he'll show us around outside.
This is what we call the garage. Here we have all my tools, so if we need to do repairs while we're on the road. I'm a carpenter by trade, so I always just have my tools with me. We store both of our bikes in here, and this is how Kelsey said, the bed is so high inside. We did this so we could fit the bikes under the bed from this way. And then up there is where we store the basketball hoop, which hangs on the side of the bus.
Another unique thing that we have in our bus is the basketball hoop on the outside. I don't think anyone else has anything like that that's living in their bus. So it's actually regulation height.
We were in Joshua Tree, just in the desert, no one for miles, and we put the hoop up. We're just in the middle of the desert, sand all around us, and we're all just playing basketball. It was kind of surreal. So the paint job on our bus, it definitely stands out. It's one of the first things people notice. I mean, we don't blend in when we're driving down the street. And the inspiration actually came from the shoes I'm wearing right now. I don't know, we kind of just held the shoe up to the bus one day and we were kind of how about we do that? We did a whole base coat in white. We sprayed on white, and then we taped off the geometric design and kind of just went to Home Depot, bought a bunch of colors, and then just had fun with it.
So the same as what's written on my t-shirt is written on the side of the bus, if not now, when? And this is just a slogan that we live by. Kelsey painted this on the bus just before we hit the road 1 year ago, and it's kind of just always stuck with us. And it's really nice because it's on the left side of the bus, so anyone that's overtaking us, which happens all the time, they get to read this little quote, and hopefully it resonates with them for whatever reason.
Before this, I'd barely picked up a hammer. Honestly, I'd help my parents out with little projects, but nothing on this scale for sure.
Yeah, I had barely even painted before, so I was very new. Anything with a school bus is so unique because of the shape of it. So he could build a house in 3 weeks with 2 other guys, but building a school bus is such a different and unique thing, and there's always different problems that you face along the way. I'd say if you're considering this lifestyle, definitely just go for it. I feel if you overthink it and think about all the what ifs and all the things that can go wrong, you'll just stop yourself from doing it. I think the first and biggest step for us was just buying the bus. So once we had that, we were okay, well, we can't go back now.
That's it.
We're all in now. So I think just start working towards making this lifestyle come true, because it's definitely doable.
All right, guys, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you in the next one.
Hi, I'm Jewel Pearson, and this is my handmade home in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've lived in the tiny house for 7 years. I designed my home from graph paper and have expanded since that time and just adore my tiny house. Born in Brooklyn, didn't live there very long, but I love big buildings and mid-rises and moving traffic and people moving, and that's kind of where I feel I get energy from. And I can honestly say I would not have been able to live in this area when I first started my tiny house journey, because I was still so connected to needing that energy from the city. But over the course of 7 years, life changed, energy changed. So now being on a friend's farm is the piece that I didn't even really know I needed. So I was young, my early 20s, and the responsibility of motherhood, single motherhood. At that point it was often balancing the checkbook to the penny. And I just knew that once I got her okay, I wanted to get to a point where I could decide, no, I'm going to just, buy this frivolously, not I've got to pay this bill and now we've got $20 left. Like I wanted to be in a where I've always felt like it was lighter. And I stumbled on a story of a woman who had built a tiny house, and it was her story of kind of rebuilding after divorce and losing things, and that wasn't my journey, but more resonated with me, like this is me, this is doing it for me, I'm starting over. And at that point I decided I'm building a tiny house. This was 2012, 2013-ish, and there wasn't a lot of information about tiny houses like there is now. The movement at that point was so focused on minimalism, and you don't build a house bigger than 18 feet, and there were like so many things about what a tiny house wasn't. But for me, it was my retirement plan. So I'm doing all the things. So this is the crown jewel, if I might say that. This is the original tiny house space. This is where the dream started. I knew I needed to have windows all around so that no matter where I put my house, that I'd have light coming in. A good sunrise and a sunset just like make my entire life. I've got a full-size bathroom. It's got a washer-dryer combo unit in it, a bathtub. And the funny thing is I don't use it as much as I imagined that I would. Most of the time that I use it, it's Nina getting a bath and not me. But yes, one of the important things for me, and it's one of the things that I say for people interested in tiny houses, make it your own. Make it include things that make home for you. So I have a beautiful floating staircase, and at the bottom of the staircase, there's a landing, which can be used for seating. I don't have a lot of multi-function things in the house. The original flip-up desk that was in the corner in the nook, I've taken that out completely. A lot of tiny houses have storage where they'll put their clothes in the couch, and the couch lifts up and you get your clothes out. I didn't do a lot of multi-function. I wanted to think through so I wasn't moving stuff out of the way all the time and, re-navigating the space, because I knew long-term that would get old for me. One overhead loft is my sleeping space, and then the other is kind of a plant nook chill space. And then coming through, pantry, storage, and then this is my kitchen, and I can cook, I just don't like to cook. So I didn't devote a lot of kitchen space, but I have a very functional kitchen. This is a microwave and a convection oven, so I can bake and do all of those things. 2-burner cooktop, and then back here is the closet. The original tiny house had a very small screened-in porch here and an overhead Juliet balcony. And so this is all new. It is built on a foundation, and this is dedicated office space, and then just having the living space and room for my plants. Really, it's a room that I built for my plants. So this is, original tiny house. This part that you see right here is original tiny house, and I didn't want to cover it up. I felt like it would be beautiful as part of the design. I don't know that I have a design style, like it's just kind of like by eye. I feel like the masks are part of who I am generationally, like the core of my existence. It's a connection, even though you don't, as a woman of color, a Black woman, I don't really know my roots. That is something that I'm working on now, but it still feels like home for me. It feels like part of my connectedness to who I am, and I wanted all of that to be part of my home. So this was just like kind of the beautiful open space, and then I realized, there's coyotes out here, so we need a little barrier. So that was the purpose of the screen. And I used like the polycarbonate overhead, so I still will have light in here. Right now it's my most favorite space. Maybe it's because it's the newest space. So in my mind, as I was thinking like the lighter lifestyle, I saw myself traveling, and I still thought I was building a tiny house space that I could travel with. And then when I bought the trailer and started building, I was like, what were you thinking? You can't travel with this. And so it is like home base. It's gonna stay stationary. It provides my lifestyle of freedom, but I still want to have the opportunity to travel with home. And so that's the travel trailer. It also has a bathroom, a shower, bathroom in it. So it's small enough that I can manage myself, but it's also big enough to be self-sufficient. So that's kind of my next project. It's all really budget driven, but I'm thinking, hoping that I can get it done by the end of this year. So advice for people who are thinking about getting into tiny house living. I think from the beginning, you need to really evaluate how you use your space, the things that you have to have in your space that are important to you. And I always say, you know, go from a list of must have, nice to have, and the wish list. You've really got to know you and know yourself and the things that are gonna make you comfortable in that space. My initial parking space was in an RV park. And I was there from May to October. RV parks aren't always safe spaces for people of color, Black people, and I ran into some issues there. And so that kind of forced the move. And I've had that issue another time in a rural space. So it's kind of, where can you put a tiny house is one of the issues, and then there's the challenge of where can you put a tiny house as a Black person, as a person of color, that you have to think about safety. Unfortunate, but the reality. There's some statistics. I think it says the tiny house movement is either 97% or 95% white. And so a lot of my work in the movement is representation, showing Black people and people of color as part of the movement, talking to the concerns that you'll have as part of the movement, in addition to just the overall, where can I put a tiny house, but what does that look like for me? And then also, I think it became important for me early on to show tiny house living as a viable option versus people just thinking tiny house people were weird. The racism in conventional home buying, it's a known issue. You can look at cities and know exactly how the redlining was done because of the way people are located, the way highways are run. At the bottom of the list for home ownership, the percentages of Black people, it still remains year after year at the bottom of that list. The conversation around tiny houses is one of the things where it's an opportunity to get to home ownership quicker. It is an opportunity for wealth building, even if it's not the traditional equity in your home. Conversation that so many people say, you know, buying a conventional home allows you to build equity and a tiny house doesn't. But there's still the opportunity of, I own my home, and so that income that I would be using to pay for a mortgage, I can invest that, I can save that, and so there's a non-traditional opportunity for wealth building. And if we are challenging the status quo of housing with tiny houses, we should challenge the entire thing. The inequity. I want the people who have not had access to housing to be included in this conversation and to be at this table. That is kind of where I feel like what my work is. Thanks for checking out my house.
People question my choices, but I don't question my choices. My name's Donna McNeil, and this is my renovation story. This church was built in 1852 by a man named General Hiram Berry, who sadly lost his life in the American Civil War. But he also was involved in the lumber industry, and this house has no nails. It's pegged together, and the beams are hewn. And it's remained over all these years pretty plumb, which says a lot to the quality of building in that era. And of course, Rockland's famous for shipbuilding, and I think some of those shipwrights came and worked on this house, and so it's incredibly well built. I don't know the date on this, but it was sold to the Salvation Army. They dropped the ceilings. They created a bunch of little rooms here and there. They made little offices up where the choir loft is. They used cheap materials. The integrity was destroyed. You know, God bless Peter Davis, who came along and bought it from the Salvation Army. He had a high aesthetic. He was an artist. He was a guitar maker. And he came in and let this place breathe again. He repaired the tin ceilings. He put in new windows, a heating system, all the kind of grunt work that doesn't interest me too much, but really saved the place. I feel like I really continued the work that Peter Davis started and honored his vision for this place. When I first looked at this place, there was a refrigerator plugged in over there, and there was an old pool table that was serving as a dining room table. There was a stove plugged into the wall. There was no cabinetry at all. First thing I did after I painted the floors was make a kitchen, and I really wanted it to feel like a bar because I knew I wanted to have events in here and I wanted people to feel comfortable. I wanted it to seat a lot of people so people could sit down and have a drink and feel like they were in both a private and a public space. It's all IKEA. This looks like Korean, but it's actually, I bought it at Lowe's. It's a sort of an imitation version. I'm so happy with it. It's been here for 7 years and it doesn't have a single mark on it because you can sort of buff them out. And I made this very thick. You know, you could go with the thin stuff, but if you make it thick, then it looks more expensive even when it's really not. I saved money by going on IKEA, but I think it looks pretty high-end, and I bought really nice appliances. There's a Bertazzoni stove, Fisher Praxel fridge, and this beautiful double-drawered dishwasher. You can do a little bit, save water, or do a larger wash, or do both of them if you have a dinner party. But the sink and the faucet and everything, this is still all IKEA. You know, I think you can find super high aesthetic with not much cost if you look around. These are antiques, they're hammered. Somebody downtown did them. I found them in an old junk shop. Stuff like that I just kept collecting and made a kitchen. I didn't work with a designer. Everything is just my idea. I'm also not one of these people that sets up a Pinterest board and, you know, thinks about what everybody else is doing. I never do that. It's just all sort of, comes from inside. I've been a curator and a supporter of the arts my entire life. So I have a keen visual sense. I can just imagine it. You know, we all have our stuff. It's undoubtedly a space that I created and is of me and my aesthetic, but I want other people to enjoy it. And I have made different spaces that I think different personalities, if you will respond to. The downstairs guest room is more masculine. The upstairs is I call it the princess room. It has a very high bed. It's very Victorian. It's got some tchotchkes in there. And I really wanted this downstairs space to be a library, but it's kind of not working like that, so I'll change that eventually. But that is also a very austere space with a kind of Donald Judd-inspired daybed in there and a collection of Turkish urns. So there was this room up there that was like a mystery room. It had an old-timey privacy window, but you open the door and there was no window, there was nothing in there. It was just this dark space. Because my bedroom's up there, I didn't want to have to come downstairs to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. So I thought, well, I'll make that a bathroom. To relate to the size of the space, I put a very long counter in there. I've been working with a carpenter throughout this whole thing named Stephen Hall, and he put a hole in that wall and created a window, and then I situated a bathtub so you look out at this gorgeous maple tree, and in the fall it's just bright orange. So bathing in general is very ceremonial, and it's also so metaphorical for birthing and cleansing and purifying. And ever since I put that bath in, I've become a devoted bath person. I think I've made some pretty nice bathrooms. It's quite a small space. I can pretty much stretch my arms across and touch the walls. So I made it a wet room, and I put in all that beautiful small marble stones so that you won't slip in the shower. And then I got the tiniest sink in the universe. Like I had a friend say, what is that thing in there pretending to be a sink? But because it's a wet room, it doesn't matter if it splashes all over, and I fell in love with it as an object. I like squares, and there's a square toilet, and people are like, what? You know, people question my choices, but I don't question my choices. So when you have such a large space to work with, you have to think about scale. Things, objects, and people can feel easily just diminished. If you're up to it, it's quite expansive, and it creates your personal largesse and your kind of upward feeling awesomeness of a space, which churches are intended to do, right? You walk in them, you're supposed to feel toward heaven. But you put a small object in here and it becomes smaller. You have to build the space in a way where it relates to the scale of the architecture, and that's a challenge. So I had this huge table built actually for a former large space, but it works beautifully here, and it anchors the space, as do the rugs, and they create little rooms, if you will, and divide the space. They're not typical living rooms, but people seem to gather and use space in original ways. There are some quite large pieces, and then there's some more intimate pieces. And I think if they play off of each other, then it can work in a large space like this. People always ask me how I heat this place. Peter Davis put in 4 Rinnai heaters in this big space and then zoned all the other spaces. They were also beige, and I painted them black. So that they would sort of go away. I can have the heat very low and come back from work and have it at 75 in half an hour. It's nice and warm in the winter, surprisingly, and really pleasant in the summer. I've never air conditioned it. Peter also put these fans in, which I think help heating and cooling. They go with a sort of more contemporary aesthetic that I brought to this place, so I left them. And you feel like you're maybe sitting Tangiers or something. And I spent quite a bit of time, 3 weeks, putting enamel-based oil, 3 coats, on the floors. Not just this floor, but throughout the whole house. The high gloss then reflects everything, and you have a mirror effect going on, which also brightens a place, and it always makes it look clean and fresh. And if the sun comes out, you can see how brilliant it all is when the sun graces the room. Changing from the gray, it just brightened everything, and yeah, I'm very happy with it. People, are daunted by the thought of keeping it clean, but I'm like, yeah, well, you have to pay to play. This place is particularly rewarding because it embraces community so beautifully. When I first started living here, there was a young woman who was staying with me she was a chef. And she started a practice called radical hospitality, which is an ancient concept coming out of the monastery where you would open your doors and welcome everyone and feed them. She'd make a big pot of soup and bake a bunch of bread, and it was just gorgeous. And it really sort of was the housewarming. It was the initial definition of asking community, or letting community know that this wasn't just one woman rattling around in this huge space, but that it was a space to share. And that was my intent in getting this enormous space, is to really have it be a community asset and to welcome folks in. So in keeping with my theme of welcoming community, after I painted the floors, I wanted to build a table and feed as many people as I could. And these pews were actually here. I wanted some things that were remnants of the history of this place. I kept the pews and I painted them, and I built this table to fit the pews exactly. I am obviously not a carpenter. It's pretty rudimentary, but you put a coat of paint on it and it sort of worked. It's used all the time, and I'm very happy about that and the pews. This other pew I bought in Ellsworth, but I thought, the more pews, the better. The outside of the church was so in need of a paint job that I thought I just might polish the aluminum siding and have it turn into a big tin can. I mean, it was really down to the metal pretty much. I decided to paint it black. That was 7 years ago. Black houses have become more in fashion, but actually black churches are traditional in Iceland. So I wasn't that weird, but the neighborhood, I had a guy all dressed in black on a big black Harley pull up and goes, you know, what are you painting your house black for? I'm like, well, you seem to like the color black pretty well. It makes the space, the building, less dominant in the neighborhood. I think that it quiets it down. If I had made it another color or even white, it would be larger. I think it really works, and I love the way that the black works with green. So I planted a lot of trees, and I also love to garden, so I've had a lot of fun doing that. But it's quite a formal garden. I wanted to really honor the elegance of this building. And I also love that it's sort of a big square. People thought I had turned this into a place for Satan worship and, all kinds of bizarre things. But I think what's really nice about painting it black, when you approach it at night, you don't really see the house, but you see these long windows of light. These candles, if you will. My neighbors were very pleased when I put a bright yellow railing on because that was my bit of humor. There's a little playfulness to adding such a bright color. I think that gives it a bit of levity and lets you know that human beings live in here that, sometimes smile. I did buy this place to share it. I like to host people. I don't have a family or a partner, and so I create one through community. There's been so much dancing and partying in this space, and it functions exactly as I envisioned in terms of welcoming folks in.
I've always told my kids, it is all in the details. Everything you do, take it one step further, and it makes it even better, and it becomes the unexpected.
Hi, I'm Grant.
And I'm Joannie.
And this is our Handmade Schoolhouse in Knoxville, Tennessee.
I'm from South Knoxville.
I was born in Oak Ridge, but been in Knoxville basically my whole life.
We dated off and on all through high school. And then when we went to the university, we decided, yeah, this is it. So we've been married for, I have to think, is it 41 years?
Yeah, I know. We've been together 45 years, at whatever capacity. When we first got married, we lived not far from here. And for some reason, one day we saw somebody up here and we just stopped in and said, would you all sell the place?
She said, oh, my dad will sell anything.
It was totally dilapidated. Every window was busted, roof falling in. Everything was just full of trash.
This originally was the Klondike School building. The neighbors have been so cool because they went to school here and they would tell stories of the window that they broke when they were playing ball or where they got their first kiss.
We've had a couple of graduating classes that have called and said, can we have a reunion there? And so we pretty much open it up when people want to look around, as long as they look legit.
When people walk through the door, usually it's a wow.
We'll have people come in and sometimes we barely know them, so yeah, just walk around.
And they'll just look, and then the questions start.
This is our living space. This was part of the original 2-room 1910 schoolhouse. Some years back, we added an elevated platform just for living space, just to separate the room, give some interest. So we added this fireplace some 25 years ago just because that is our main living space and we enjoy fires so much.
We truly live in this space. We watch a lot of television, a lot of movies, we play cards, we play board games. When the kids come over, this is where we hang out. We spent a lot of time during COVID creating the dollhouse that was our daughter's that never got finished.
It sat down in the basement for 30 years, and we flirted with throwing it away, but we just couldn't. And
No.
when COVID hit, we needed, like everybody, something to do. So we said, well, let's renovate the dollhouse. And it really was fun because as an architect and a teacher, we didn't want to go buy dollhouse pieces. So we either made or transformed things.
Right.
And probably one of the neatest things was Joanne came up with it, a lid on coffee creamer. When you take it off and set it down, it's got a lid that pops up and it looks like a commode. So that's the commode in the dollhouse. So those were the types of things that we just spent hours trying to do and look for while we were locked up for 2 years.
Travel has really influenced us with our colors and different things we want to incorporate into our living space. We have modern, we have boho, we have a lot of African things. We have our camel collection inspired by our camel trek in Morocco. I believe that a collection of things needs to live together to make it look like a collection. I've always loved globes. Maybe it's from my teaching years, but always on the lookout for a new globe to add to the collection.
We just wanted this to be a big, open, inviting space. So we actually just flowed this into what is the kitchen and dining area. We have an existing wall we took out to bring light in and to make this even more open and inviting for where we live and spend most all of our time.
I have really treated the hallway like a hallway in a school. When we travel, we take a lot of pictures, and I was looking for a way to display those a little differently. And so that's all the time changing.
And our kids would rollerblade, roller skate, tricycle, bicycle up and down the halls. It's always been a play space, if you will.
The floors are kind of rough. There are dog scratches where they've stopped, and I wouldn't take those out for anything. This is our Hilton. It is misspelled on purpose. Come on in, I'll show you around. We love to visit New York City, and we kind of wanted to have that vibe but yet work in here, so we created our faux New York City skyline out of wood. The Hilton, because it is surrounded by hills that are gorgeous out here, and there's not as much color in here because we didn't want to overwhelm our guests. But that really started out as our nursery, and it became Owen's nursery, then Owen's bedroom, and then it became Wallace's nursery and Wallace's bedroom. And they were not very happy when we changed it over.
The day after they left.
Yeah. They're gone, let's fix it up.
Throw it out.
I taught in a school for years that was a happy environment, and things were everywhere. There were always colorful pieces of art and works of the kids, and so I just thought, well, we need to do it that way here. So we have lots of pictures from places that we have traveled, and one of the things that I really like is my book tree that I had seen on Pinterest, and we went to an estate sale, and they had tons of books. They were not really books that you would want to read, so I thought these would be perfect to give them another life. It stays up all the time, but we have lights on it at Christmas, and we'll put hearts on it at Valentine's Day and birds on it during the spring and summer, and it's just been a really fun addition. And besides, every school has to have a lot of books.
Now we can go into the principal's office.
Olive, come here. Crazy girl.
This is the bedroom, and we wanted a loft type feel. We built a platform up for the bed just so that we could have a little variety in here and have a little interest.
The clock is one of my favorite things in here because Grant has always said, if you're 5 minutes early, you're late. So I found this clock, and I wanted it for his office, and it didn't fit. But that's okay, because we ended up putting it in here, and I think it's perfect in here. It does work, but it's loud.
It came out of an abandoned mall down in Florida.
Down in Florida,
somehow made its way up to Knoxville.
If we ever have a fire or anything ever happens, our books back behind me here are the one thing that you're supposed to grab We've been writing books together for years. We are on book number 22, I think, now. We'd love to get them out and read them, see some of the crazy things that went on. Unfortunately, we didn't do it when we were renovating. It was kind of the beginning of our modern phase we went through, and now we're probably adding more to it to make it more the boho feel that we seem to be comfortable with. Our bed is on rollers, which has been kind of cool. When it snows, we like to turn the bed around and watch the snowflakes coming around. Now I want to take you to my favorite room in the house. It's my closet. It's odd to say that a closet's your favorite in your house, but this is really one of my favorites. Totally me, way too many clothes. So I had all my clothes on the white clothes hangers, and I thought, those just don't really work. And Mom's was all the time looking for something to do. So I ripped the fabrics up into pieces, and I showed her, and we worked on them, how I wanted them wrapped around the coat hangers, and then we would take yarn and go over top of that. My mother did about 200 of those. Every piece of clothing in my closet is one that my mom and her caretaker helped to cover with me, and they are priceless to me. Also, one of my favorite things in here is my pair of lips that Grant and I made from the barn wood on the barn next to us. I went down to my neighbor one day and I asked him what he was going to do with this barn wood, and he said, I don't know, do you want some? And it was like, yes, sure, I want some. He said, what are you going to do with it? And I said, would you please just trust me and let me show you when it's finished? And so we had them hung up, and I went to get him one day and I said, here's your barn wood. And he was like, I never would have thought that's what you were going to do. But he was so proud of the lips. I'm always interested in what they seem to go through first. And there's really nothing that everyone seems to go to other than the bus. They like the bus. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of bus owners in the neighborhood, so I hopped in the car with the neighbor. We went down to the bus guy, and I told him what I was wanting. He said, you don't care if it has an engine? No, I don't want an engine in it. And he said, well, yeah, if you want one. We got back in the car, and the neighbor went, what the hell just happened? I said, I just bought a bus. It has a reading area. We have a table and 2 of the original seats that we play cards. People hang out in it and parties. It's great in the rain. It's just kind of cool.
The bus doesn't have an engine intentionally, and when you lift the grill up, the front grill up off of the bus, we pull our grill out to grill. So that was,
yeah.
We've enjoyed that. A lot of people do like that because
yeah.
it's just pretty unique.
If you come to our house, you have to sign our bus. And we have had a lot of signatures. The bus has only been out there for about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, something like that.
And it already has a lot of signatures that are special.
This place is our lives. I mean, we've been here 40 years, and you know, again, just because we did the work ourselves, we never could let go. So
no, it does mean everything.
Yeah.